We are live. What's up, everybody? My name is Chris Bennett, and I am the host of the Homegrown LiBEERtarians podcast. We have three wonderful people who have volunteered to come on and talk about the issue at hand. And the issue is, why aren't more minorities in the Libertarian Party? We will explain our venture to libertarianism or the party or whatever, and then we'll go on to the next phase. Um, I actually started my roots. Uh, I grew up in Colorado myself, and I actually started my activism in the Colorado Party. Uh, I was just left the service. Um, I did boot camp, and I decided it wasn't my thing. So they freely let me go. And I was at home on an off day. It was like my birthday actually, and I was watching I was going through the channels, and I never seen this uh, station called C-SPAN. So I'm watching C-SPAN, and I'm um, watching the Libertarian National Convention. I think it was Washington that year, and it was on an off year. For years and years and years, the Libertarian Party was their national convention were on off years because of ballot access. Well, I think the last one was like 93, and then we started having them on 96, 98, 2000, whatever. Uh, so I'm watching this gentleman speaking, and I had previous years, I was a Democrat. I knew previous years ago that, the Democrats were using minorities for their votes and, promising all this kind of stuff. And they never really delivered and all this stuff. And I figured it out when I was like 17, 16, 17, 18. And I was like, there's got to be something better. And I wasn't too thrilled about the Republicans either. Um, so I'm watching this gentleman at this convention, black gentleman actually, talking about ending the war on drugs, strengthening our Second Amendment rights, reducing government, reducing the debt, all this stuff that I was just like, oh wow, this guy seems pretty cool. Okay, what is this Libertarian Party? Well, I kind of knew a little bit about the Libertarian Party because I knew a little bit about Ron Paul back in '88. So I knew a little bit about him, but I didn't know a whole bunch about him. So, and the gentleman that was speaking happened to be Richard Body. I got to meet in '97 or '98. I forgot what year. I actually got to meet one of my heroes, or I wouldn't say heroes. The some of the people that the person that got me into the party. So that next day, I'm flipping through the phone book, and when we actually had phone books, and found the Libertarian Party headquarters. Called it up and left a message, and then someone called me about 2-3 hours later and said, "Hey, we would like to meet you. Why don't you come down to the Colorado Convention Center and meet a few of us, because we're out here petitioning to put our candidate, whoever we decide at the convention, put on the ballot here in Colorado." So it's like, okay. I went and met the guys, and a year later, I was probably about a year and a half later, I was volunteering at the headquarters, sending out intro packages and stuff like that, and reading books on libertarianism. And the first two books I remember clearly on my introduction to libertarianism was uh, um, Henry Hazlitt's book, um, and, David Bergland's book. Uh, so that's how I got in. And who wants to go next?
I guess I can go. I'm Mercedes. I'm from. Or what?
Go ahead.
Okay. I'm in Nebraska. I'm running for Nebraska State Legislature, District 37. I came to the Libertarian Party a couple years ago. I didn't even know that we had a state affiliate at the time. I found my state party through the Louisiana Libertarian Party, actually. So that's fun. To my knowledge, I'm not going to say I'm the only person of color in our state party, but I believe I am. So our state party started out at Omaha, I found out, and the Omaha area is very redlined and segregated and racist, and it's where our dear governor lives. So being in Nebraska, I like to joke that I'm in danger. We have a lot of white supremacists here, in my area especially. We have a lot of income inequality and disparities in the state for people of color. Our COVID cases are disproportionately in statistically in our in our Latino community. Growing up here, my dad is from Chihuahua, Mexico. He came here in the 80s as a kid, I believe through the Reagan program, but I'm not sure. Fleeing gang violence and domestic assault and abuse. And they settled here, and my mom had me in high school. And what I've noticed in this party, here at least, is that the Libertarian Party is very upper white, middle class. Because of the income disparities and inequalities, the people who have the most time to be politically active are white, upper middle class people, or people of color that have broken that barrier and tend to be more conservative. So the disproportionate representation for minorities in the party is based. It's a systemic problem of just we don't have people of color historically don't have time to be politically active because of the jobs that we are normally pushed into, and the what I see here is very disappointing, especially when talking about race and racial issues, because the people I'm talking to just have never even thought about it. They don't even know it exists. I tell people a lot in this area that there are two sets of rules in this country, and it's a privilege that you don't know what I'm talking about. And so even having those racial conversations within the party are important, and all of the burden is put on us, and part of that problem is we don't want to do it. We don't want to take the time to catch everybody up to where we're at, because that sets us back. That puts us through things that we don't want to talk about, but we have to talk about them, because the only way to fix it is by talking about it, by helping other people of color be involved any way that they can. Like in my area, because of the COVID cases and the disparities and how Latinx are in the meatpacking industry. We are an agricultural state. All of the 60% of the COVID cases came from meatpacking plants in Nebraska. We are lucky enough to have a senator. His name is Senator Vargas. His father died of COVID. We have a lot of coalitions that are coming together in our state that are getting involved, and they're mostly independent. Voting base or Democratic, just because people of color tend to be more Democratic. Nebraska is special, whereas in our metropolitan areas we're very Democratic or independent, and then outside laying areas is very red Republican or independent. This year, with And because of Senator Upke and her initiatives to get the Libertarian Party on the ballot forever and as a recognized party, that has been luring more people of color in my area to the Libertarian Party. But that's because I'm in the party. I'm the secretary of our affiliate. But I did that knowing that if I could do it and show people that it's not as hard as we think, that I would get people involved, because I'm from this area. I know how it works. We're a very purple district because of our university. So our government model here is very appealing to people of color, but we have that old homegrown good old boys club still because Nebraska is very white. The settlers that came here had the money to migrate out here. My grandparents, my mom's family was a homesteader here. We were here before the state was founded. We owned businesses because we helped found this state, and that's a privilege. But being as we were homesteaders, we're more anarcho out here, where you help your neighbor because it's about survival. And that having that mindset means that we do come together as a community. The only problem is that community has been largely white. Now we're getting more minorities. I was on a virtual town hall last night that the college put together, and there was somebody talking about how in the 90s, when I was born in 1990, there was about a 5% Hispanic population in town, and now there's a 15% population. So the people of my community are even struggling with integrating other people and people of color, and we have a refugees population from all over Latin America and from Somalia, and we have some Middle Eastern refugees. So the fact that we're having a problem integrating the diversity in my community is a problem that I see in the party as a whole also. So in my opinion, we just have a lot of work to do, I guess. We have to keep having these conversations in an educated way that can meet people where they are, because when I tell somebody I'm one of the lucky ones, I'm one of the kids that the system worked for, I had the ladder out of the poverty hole that I was born into, but then because of the government, they took that away. And that's why I'm a libertarian, is because the government cut my national youth sports program that helped low-income people of color in my area. I was like 14. So it's connecting with people and helping them understand, people like us that are stuck in the duopoly, because that's what they teach immigrants. They don't want us to think, they want us to just work, which I'm okay with, but I like days off too, and equal pay and good working conditions, and life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So if anybody else wants to go.
You want to go, Raymond?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and go. But just to let you know, the Y is silent. It gets everybody every time. You got to talk to my mom about that. But it is Ramon. It's my full name's Ramon Anthony Doan, and I'm running for U.S. Senate out in the state of Colorado. So Mercedes, I know a lot about what you're talking, especially when it comes to Nebraska, since we are neighbors. I've been up to Julesburg, and I've been to Nebraska myself, so I'm definitely familiar with the culture shock, if you will, when I arrive. But one of the reasons why I think the Libertarian Party has a problem recruiting people that are minorities in general, or just people of color, is the fact that when it comes to the social issues, as Mercedes touched on earlier, it's kind of ignored, or they wish to avoid speaking of the subject. The thing about the Libertarian Party is that we say that we're fiscally responsible and socially conscious. However, it only seems to occur when it comes to issues that pertain to the freedoms, if you will, that the Caucasian community is promoting at that time. So when you looked at legalization of marijuana, granted, the majority of the population within the nation wasn't looking at it when, the Libertarian Party first started in the 1970s. But now that it's become more popular, you're starting to see more Caucasians jump on board, where Black people, we're still And I don't know if it's the same for the Hispanic population or Asian population. Black people, we're still kind of skeptical because in reality, around the nation, it's still illegal in certain parts. And if I'm to go to Nebraska, statistically speaking, we're already more likely to be pulled over to begin with if we just go off of statistics. Now you're talking about if we're already prone to go to jail or prone to get pulled over, prone to go to jail, we still tend to stay away from these substances that everybody else is advocating for. Whereas, our counterparts, not so much. They're the rebels. They're saying, hey, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And then now they're getting these measures passed because they're essentially still the majority, where we're still the minority. So when we speak about these freedoms, just in general, a lot of people within a party don't recognize the social issues that a lot of people of color face just in their everyday life. You look at the Joe Jorgensen comment, the anti-racist comment or tweet. How many people just went off on Joe Jorgensen for saying we should promote anti-racism? Now, from their perspective, because I did listen to some people, since I'm running for office, I really have to, and I should. I understood the timing and the sensitivity of the subject. A lot of people aren't ready for that. But what we're starting to see now is a lot of people who say, oh, yeah, I have Black friends, I'm not racist. They instantly attach that statement to themselves, and they shouldn't. It's like if I say we should put rapists in jail, and then if you get mad off of that statement, my hesitation is going to be, are you rapist? So when you hear people kind of get on the defensive mode about some of these statements, you really question, and that's Black people in general, what are your intentions? Do you actually like me, or am I just a token? And the same thing happened when Donald Trump hesitated when it came to denouncing white supremacy during the debate. Now, I know a lot of people say he's denounced it before, and I have heard him denounce it. But when you hear that hesitation, you create doubt. And when you create that doubt, there's a lot of reasons for people not to come into the party. And sadly to say, that was one of them. So there are a lot more reasons.
Yeah. And how did you come about becoming a libertarian?
Myself, I actually was a registered Republican. I ran for public office back in 2016 for state senator out in my area of Denver, Colorado. I grew up in Montbello, and I still reside in Green Valley Ranch, so literally like right across the street. But during my run in 2016, I was kind of a token. It's kind of same way in the Republican Party. They were like, oh, you're young, you're Black, and a Republican, you should run for office. And so with my naivety, I thought I was, going to win because I was born and raised in my neighborhood. I worked for the government, I know, which is an anomaly for the Libertarian Party right now. Well, actually, not right now, just ever. But I was still a registered Republican, and I was like, I'm knowledgeable on these issues. I know what I'm speaking on, and I've worked on legislation. I worked on policy. So I thought it was a shoo-in. Lo and behold, I was wrong, drastically wrong. I lost, and I learned during that race that when every time I went out, knocked on doors, spoke to people, they didn't ask about me. They only asked about the presidential candidate, and that was Donald Trump. And it was hard for me to defend him on a lot of topics within my community based off his rhetoric. So after 2016, I changed parties. And the reason why I changed parties is because I saw Gary Johnson. A lot of people got on him about Aleppo. And I was just looking at him. I'm like, every politician can't know everything. No human being can. And the fact that everybody gave him flack, I was just like, wow, like, why are people ragging on this guy? If you asked Hillary Clinton, possibly would have known because she was Secretary of State. But if you asked Donald Trump that question at that time, I can assure you he would have butchered it, messed up completely. And I just saw humility with Gary Johnson. I saw essentially me. He was somebody that left the Republican Party. So I changed, I left, And then I ran for U.S. representative in 2018 under the Libertarian Party. We were able to have the first statewide primary with myself and another gentleman, Galen Kent, out here just in 2020. So we're definitely making progress out here. But that's the reason why I came, because I saw some of the values that the Republicans were promoting, such as fiscal responsibility. And yet I saw the social advocacy within the Libertarian Party. And a lot of the people who kept me in it, I'm ecstatic because they really make me happy to be here.
It's kind of interesting because you're from Denver, and I lived in Arapahoe County. I've spent most of my time in Centennial, what we call now Centennial, and I went to Heritage High. I went to Heritage High School, and I graduated in 1990. So, it's nice to see another. When I was out there back in the 90s or whatever, we may had maybe like 2 or 3 Black libertarians. So it's nice to see the party growing a little bit out there. So
I'm not going to say those numbers have changed too much now, but I'm going to say we're up to probably a good 20. So we're making progress.
It's progress. Right. All right, Oscar, you're next on the chopping block.
All right, hey guys, I'm Oscar Herrera. I'm running for state representative here in Ohio's 96th district. I am Hispanic, so I'm the only Hispanic running for office for the Libertarian Party here in Ohio, and also the youngest candidate they're running now. I'm only 24 years old, which is which is crazy to think that I'm doing that at this age. But how I got into the Libertarian Party was exactly the same time as Raymond, that I remembered in 2016. I didn't like the rhetoric of the Republican Party, and I saw parts of it in 2012 when I was still in the party. I was 17, just got involved, and there was like one instance when I was volunteering for the Mitt Romney campaign. This one older gentleman was going off on Hispanics, and he probably didn't realize that I was there, but he was saying all these effing Mexicans and all this racial stuff in the Republican building. And one of the volunteer coordinators shut him down because he knew who was there. And in Southern California, half the area, if not more, is Hispanic. So it's like you don't say those things in a heavily Hispanic area, especially when the party already has an image issue with Hispanics, and not to the extent it did now with Donald Trump. But I just blew it off. I was like, that's just probably just one guy. Everyone's been really nice. I knew Hispanic Republicans down there, so I was like, okay, this is for me. Then I moved in Ohio 2 years later, and then it's a whole different Republican Party here. Predominantly white. Hispanics are only like not even 4%. We're 3.9% of the population. Even though in the last 8 years we've gone up in like by 120,000 Hispanics that moved into the area, which is great, but we're still a minority, and I feel it because there's only like 20 left in this area, which is crazy. But you know what? But on to the libertarian side, it's like I saw Gary Johnson, and like you said, his humility. He was very human. He wasn't trying to be something he's not, and I connected with that because it's like, you just got to be yourself in politics. It's like people could see through the charades nowadays, and I mean, like with Trump, I mean, whatever your opinion of him is like he is himself, and people love it. They eat it up because it's outside the polished figure of what we expect politicians to be. And the same thing with Gary Johnson. He was himself, like I said before, but he spoke highly of Hispanics, especially at the time living in New Mexico and as governor. which was great compared to what Trump was saying, where like Mexico is saying the worst of the worst. And I'm like, well, you're talking about my grandparents and my parents, and they're not the worst of the worst. They're actually the hardest working people I know. And they raised me, so what the hell? What are you talking about? Just out of experience. But so in 2016, I joined the party, got involved in the Gary Johnson campaign, and now 4 years later, I'm running my own campaign for state representative, and can't believe that either. But you know what? In terms of minorities, it's like in my campaign, it's been very helpful that I'm a minority because like I've spoken at an NAACP event. A few black folks were very happy to see a minority candidate. They actually, in one event, they were asking about race issues in America, and they had a few other people answer. And I took the mic and said, hey, it's funny that we're talking race issues in Ohio, but we're not talking to the only minority running for office right now. And I got a few laughs, but someone in the back's like, yeah, why don't let's hear him out. So I gave my little speech about race issues, and just like I pretty much the crux was this: we don't fight racism with racism. We don't fight white supremacy with black or brown supremacy. We fight it with unity and solidarity. And I told them the NAACP, specifically like the black people there, they were talking about getting more black people involved in politics. I'm like, you just got to go into your communities and activate people, help them out. If you see someone who could be a great, let's say, city council person, like recruit them into whatever political party you're in and help them out. Get the voice out there because people will listen. I mean, fortunately for me, race hasn't been a detriment. I mean, people have been very open to what I've been saying. I mean, yeah, they're like, hey, where are you from? Like, what are you? Like, figuring out someone, they think I'm like Italian because just of the complexion. Like, no, I'm Hispanic. And they're like, oh, cool, that's cool. But there has been like one or two people who just said, oh, just go back home. And I'm like, well, I'm already home as I'm reading comments. I just brush it off because I'm like, you know what? The majority of my interactions have been positive, and in the same way in the Libertarian Party. Does it feel like sometimes you're the token? Of course, but I'm like, okay, whatever. I might as well take advantage of it and use the platform that I'm being given to talk about these issues. Also help the party. That way, we get more people involved and make people more comfortable to look at us versus, let's say, like recently, Ice Cube and 50 Cent were showing support for Trump, and they got called all these names, Uncle Tom. And I think that's what keeps people, minorities, away, because there's such a backlash if they leave the proverbial plantation. And we should be more welcoming than people are nasty when it comes to them leaving the other parties. Like, say, hey, we don't care what they say about you. Like, just come on board. We'll help you out. You may not be right where you're with us completely, but if you have any questions, like, we'll mentor you and keep you posted on anything. But it was great that our previous vice chair was Hispanic, which was with Alex Merced. Now we have an openly, I would say, LGBTQ chair, which is great. So we're making inroads in that end, but we should be working in recruiting more people and that. And I hate to use, like, we keep using tokens, but like, if we keep promoting like Ricky Harrington Jr., who will be the first Black senator for Arkansas and the first Libertarian senator in Congress, that just happenstance. It just happens. But it's like, hey, you can be Black and not a Democrat. You could be Black and a Libertarian. You could be Hispanic and a Libertarian. You don't have to stick to the same old parties just because your family's been it. And just tell people, like, hey, if you like what we're saying, consider joining us. Don't just force them to come in, because we don't believe in force. But just say, if you're open to us, consider us. We'll welcome you in regardless of your background. And that's all I really have to say. I would like other people to speak, because I could talk forever.
I think Well, I think things have changed a little bit. I mean, I'm 48. When I joined the party, it was 91, so the party was still relatively new per se. I mean, yeah, 20 years and whatnot, but the party was pretty new. Um, I remember the first meeting I ever went to. It was a Denver LP meeting, and it was after it was shortly before it was shortly before Christmas time, and we had a meeting, and we've been doing some outreach or whatever in our neighborhoods and stuff like that, and one of the members had asked a couple people to come to one of our meetings. So two black gentlemen come in and they're checking out some of the brochures that we have, when we actually had brochures, to pass out and everything. Now everything's online. This is pre-online stuff. So and the first person that welcomed them came up to him. They were reading. I forgot which pamphlet it was, and the gentleman comes up to him and goes, we're against affirmative action, right?" And I never seen two people leave a meeting as quick as they did, um, because of the fact. I mean, he wasn't very welcoming. He didn't ask for their name. He didn't say, "Hey, how'd you hear about us?" That was just the first thing that this guy said, and I went over and I go, "Why did you say that?" Um, and he's like, "Well, we're right. I mean, we don't support affirmative action." I go, "That's not how you welcome in people. Are you trying to keep it, this one, you know? I mean, I was just, I at that point, I almost left. And throughout the years, I saw a lot of image problems. Let's just say image problems, with the LP, and people just, uh, they may be right about a lot of things, but they don't know how to market it. And when I ran for briefly ran for VP back in 07, 08, I wasn't able to make it to the convention in Denver. Um, but I had a lot of people saying that the Libertarians would never put a minority on the ticket. That you should go back to being a Democrat. All this stuff, and right then and there, I almost gave up in 08. In fact, it was so bad that I didn't even vote for president in 08 because I was just so disheartened with a lot that the party was bringing in. Um, the conservatarians, all right, that were so disgusted with the Republican Party that they tried to take over the Libertarian Party. Now, I do have hope. What got me in the fold, and doing this podcast, was Spike Coe talking to Black Lives Matter people in Columbus, Ohio, and he was actually treating them like human beings. Okay, they were asking him questions, and he answered them not like a typical. He said, "What we would like to do." Okay, and he wasn't in their face being mean to them. He was just laying things out. We want to end qualified immunity. We want to end war on drugs. These things will help the Black community and any community, nevertheless, help them get back on their feet and grow. Okay. And after I saw that video, I was like, Spike's my man. All right. I love that dude. Okay. And then I got back into the fold of things. So Spike's doing it right. Okay. I don't think I've ever seen in my almost 30 years of being involved in libertarian politics. It's the first time I've ever seen a presidential ticket, someone on the presidential ticket, go outside the box and help and talk to other people that weren't like party of the Libertarian Party. And we get these um stereotypes in the LP. Oh well, and I used to use those stereotypes too. For the longest time, I was like, well, the LP is mostly middle-aged white men, and they sitting on a computer and they still live with their mom in the basement. Okay, types. Not quite anymore. And there's some that are out there, but they don't speak for all of us. And that's where my head kind of turned to, you can't put everybody in the same box. And it was nice, see, I like to see more people involved, especially people of color. I live in Illinois now, and for the longest time, I was the only person of color to show up for like conventions and stuff. The longest time. Now we've got quite a few more people. Okay, we got a brother up in the Chicago area running for state rep, Joshua Flynn. Um, and he could be the first libertarian representative in the House. He's running a really good race, and it's a tight one with the incumbent, who's a Democrat. So, in your short years of being a part of the party, have you experienced some things like I have, or maybe because you guys are a little younger, that people are a little bit more open about being um, being a minority and in the LP, because I've noticed in the last year or two, people are more accepting. I mean, the younger generation, the millennials, are more accepting to, hey, we like to see more. And I've gotten a lot of shout outs, a lot of millennials, okay, saying, hey, we would like to see you do this, or we like to try to do this, or we like to do that, something that we haven't been doing. So I don't know. Has anybody kind of experienced the same kind of thing, or has it been just pretty good?
Yeah, here I've experienced that. I get accused of playing identity politics a lot. And I get really confused when people say that, because I'm just being who I am. I'm just speaking about my issues and my problems that affect me and people like me. And if that's identity politics, I'm really concerned of what we're doing here. I'm not sure if it's because they have never experienced that, and that's not what they're fighting for liberty. Like I hear there's a quote floating around the interweb, is somebody who is not affected by the system thinks politics is boring, whereas I think it's the most interesting thing in the world because it affects who I am directly. 100 years ago, I wouldn't be here. I'm a mulatto. I was against a law to exist. Like, my existence was illegal. And we've not come very far from that fundamental belief of we're all the same, you should be the same, these are the issues, nothing else matters. I had to pass the purity test to be seen in the party. They still avoid me because I am so passionate about what I'm doing here because it affects my life. And I did lie. There are Nathan Parada is in the party, but he's in Lincoln and he has a podcast. He is also Latinx. He's Puerto Rican, I believe. But that's just it. There's so few of us, and we have to forge our own ways, and because we are the pioneers of our generations for these kinds of things. I know in the 90s that we had a racial diversity program in the education system here. That's why kids like me and kids like Spike, because he's an elder millennial, that's why we're a little bit more diversified. We grew up, I was born in 90, our 1990 kids were considered the pioneers of the internet because we were the first kids to actually have it like in school. And whereas Spike is old enough where he grew up without the internet, he's latchkey, not latchkey generation. And so because of Gen X and how life is and how libertarians are, even because Gen X and tail end boomers, Gen X are who started the party. They are the resistance. They are who did start fighting it because that's who was available to fight then. Now that we have other people coming in, we have that boomer effect where it's taking the generational divide is very evident. And then we do have they say don't play identity politics, but then label libertarians. Whereas I came to the party and I said, I'm a libertarian. They're like, well, what are you? Are you an ANCAP or an ANSOC or a SOCCAP? And I still don't know what any of that means, mind you, because I don't micro-label things. I don't think that it matters. It obviously matters because we have individual problems, but I don't need to be micro-labeled into a box so that you can compartmentalize my issues to see if they fit in with your liberty movement. And so yes, I've experienced it bigly here. Bigly. On my first meeting, they were talking about how to reach LGBTQ and people of color and minorities and just issues like that. And I'm sitting here going, why aren't you asking me? I'm a minority and I have access to everybody that you're talking about. I'm trying to reach your side, the extreme right, because I was a Republican before I became a libertarian, but I was also an independent before that. And I was raised by Democrats who were Republican before that. So it's a universal libertarian party, and I've found more rural states. Like Southern California doesn't have this problem. Texas doesn't really, but does. Nebraska, Illinois, Ohio, parts of Colorado, the conservative, social conservative states. But it's slowly changing. The gold tide is rolling. That gold roll tide.
Hey, before you start, Ramon, I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Since you're a candidate, a statewide candidate, actually, okay, has anybody come up to you and asked you about Black Lives Matter, and what is your response to that?
All the time. That's essentially, yeah, that's all the time. But my response is I support the movement. I'm not going to say Black lives don't matter because one, I'm Black, and I definitely believe my life matters. But I'm not really a fan of the organization. And when you speak to people in general, just about politics, or if you even talk to them about Black Lives Matter, I can almost assure you most Black people are not part of the organization. So I think this is where that disconnect, and it's very strong, and it's a very strong disconnect between ethnicities and just the desire to interpret in your own way how somebody is saying something to you. So if I said hello, people want to say, oh, he said hello to me super loud or super soft, kind of going back on what Mercedes was talking about of kind of carpent, getting tongue tied there, compartmentalizing people and trying to place them in a box and just trying to see where they can put somebody. So for me, because I do travel the entire state, again, the metro area where I reside and, where you formerly resided, Chris, is a lot more diverse. You're going to see, even though there's not a lot of Black people in the state of Colorado to begin with, you're going to see more Hispanics, you're going to see more Blacks, you're going to see whites, you're going to see Asians. It'll be a lot more diverse. It'll be a little international community within certain areas. However, once you leave the Denver metro area and maybe Colorado Springs, because it is a military city, Pueblo will be definitely more Hispanic, white. You'll still see a small segment of Black population. Trinidad, Hispanic, white. Greeley, Hispanic, white. After that, just becomes white. Nothing wrong with that. I tell people that all the time. I'm not, and I don't want anybody to assume that when you ask to see diversity, that you don't want to see white people. It's the fact that you just want to know if there's someone out there who might possibly feel the same way you feel if discrimination comes up. So let's say somebody, like, this does happen to me, and it has happened to me. I've been called a coon and a nigga several times during my run for U.S. Senate. And when I was a Republican, that happened way more than it has happened now. But I've been called that. And that's by whites and by Black people. The thing that I want people to understand is we can change that narrative within the Libertarian Party if we start to be more keen on social issues. Because right now, pretty much anytime I hear people speak, it's solely economic, solely. And when you hear about like former things like the Lugo massacre, that actually happened in Colorado. And when you hear about Black Wall Street happened in Oklahoma, a lot of these things weren't necessarily based off of economics. Black people were doing well on Black Wall Street, and little Hispanics and Black people who worked for the union were doing well. So economically speaking, there was no issue. What happened was the social issue, and this is where libertarians could easily, get on point and attack their opponents and say, this is where government overreach lies. And more importantly, government inactions for the things that they are technically supposed to do. When you have a community burned down to the ground as Black Wall Street, and there is nothing done to the people who did it, so essentially you're condoning murder, then yeah, the government's not doing their job, what they're supposed to do. However, when you look at Lilo Massacre, when the government actually gets involved and essentially sends us out its National Guard to settle a civil dispute, really, between employer and employee, that is a major problem. So I think that's where libertarians, we have the message, and I'm trying to be a proper messenger for that message. However, when it comes to the party as a whole, I think we have to become more keen on tying those social issues into the economic ones. Because we can talk all day about economic issues, and that's what's really going to get the former Republicans. However, we're trying to get a variety of people. We're trying to get everybody. We're not just trying to cater to Republicans. We're trying to get everybody. And that means we're going to have to start being more keen on the social issues and how people feel, actually show empathy, and just not say, hey, what are you doing here? This is the LP meeting, right? Like your situation, Chris. That's where that lack of, just not knowing where your surroundings are, not knowing who you can actually attract, that is a problem. And I think we can change that with the right messaging and messengers. And that's why I'm assuming that you had us on, Mercedes and Oscar and myself.
I've been kind of mixing social issues with and for as long as I can remember, because I've seen it in our communities and whatnot. Certain communities. I ran a Taco Bell in Central where a lot of the Latinos lived in Denver, but they traveled down to say, Littleton, Inglewood, Aurora, or whatever for jobs because that. And my Taco Bell, the last one I worked at, this back in the '90s, was 75% Latino. I had Latinos from not just from Mexico, but from Panama, Guatemala, Colombia, um, Honduras. So and we belong. And knowing some Spanish because I took two languages. I took two languages in high school. I took Spanish and French. And knowing some key words, I can communicate back to them in their language in Spanish. But knowing key stuff, I could. I knew what they were saying, okay, in Spanish, but I could give it back to them in English. So there the a slight language barrier, but we all got okay, knew what hard work was all about. So I always respected my Latino brothers and sisters, But going back to the whole social economic thing, okay, in um, the social issues with some of the economic issues, like if we ended the war on drugs, okay, get the drug cartels and and stuff like that, uh, black communities won't be riddled with like what happened with the crack epidemic and now the heroin epidemic. Okay, uh, and if they ended like immunity, qualified immunity, holding cops responsible, we see probably half the police brutality cases that we've been seeing. Okay, um, building up our community. We really don't. We really need to focus back on. And I was talking to my buddy Josh Flynn about this. We don't need a whole bunch of government money just thrown into our communities. What we need to do is focus back on viewership, okay, in our communities, all right, because we're never going to see we're rare to see black or Hispanic CEOs of companies. It's rare. We have to be We have to be CEOs of our own companies, okay, our small businesses, because that's the way things grow, and for our communities, and it's a two-pronged situation as a solution in our community back up and going. And that's what I've been doing. But you'll see a lot of libertarians, the ones that, never, stepped in the hood or, or whatever, say, oh, why do you got to bring in social stuff? It's an economic thing. It's like, no, it's a two-pronged system. We didn't get to this point overnight. It's one of the things that the libertarians have been saying for the last 50 years. So if I'm wrong, let me know. Let me know if I'm wrong. Speak up.
You're not wrong, Chris.
So okay. Oscar, I got a question for you.
Go for it.
When even though it's not really it is kind of a state issue, but it really isn't a state issue. It's more of a federal issue. What do you say when people ask you about immigration?
I took the idea from Larry Sharp because he said it best. I'm an I liked his idea of an Ellis Island approach. That if you could pass a background check and a medical check, you should be able to come to this country and work. And I tell that to even like hardcore Trump supporters, and they could get behind it. And I tell them like, if it was easy back then with the limited technology to get a background check and medical check, imagine how much easier it's going to be now with all this technology we have to do a thorough background check. Like if you have a speeding ticket in another country, that's all right. Like, come on ahead, that doesn't bother me. But if let's say you're trying to get in and you have like a murder charge or like let's say something like that, then yeah, that should be a bar to entering the country. And when I tell people that, they're a little bit more open to the idea because uh, sometimes reading comments on like Jorgensen's and Cohen's things like, oh, libertarians, they want to get rid of borders. There'll be no USA if we let libertarians get elected. But I mean, we're for open immigration as long as you're here to work, be a productive member of society. Um, you're not here to harm people who to commit acts of terror, for example. I mean, but that's few and far in between. But that's that's a reality that we have to deal with sometimes. But the Ellis Island idea from Larry Sharp, I use that and works well. People get on board. It's a sensible solution that people like to hear. So, and I tell them like if you were, especially here in Ohio, I tell them if you were to go to a state with that's heavily Hispanic, like California, Arizona, all those places. I use San Diego for example because that's where Hispanics are the hardest working people you're ever gonna meet. Like you never see a Hispanic standing on the corner asking for money. They're gonna find a way to hustle. They work hard. They're very proud. We're very proud people. We rarely ask for help because we know like if we want something, we have to work for it. And I mean, I see that same drive in some of the black community, and so it's like the spirit of entrepreneurship is there. It just needs to be activated a little bit more so they could be step away from the stereotypical jobs we are forced into and lead our communities as entrepreneurs, CEOs, businessmen, lawyers, doctors. And it's happening for the lucky few who get out, but for the rest of the people who get stuck, it's not even an option for them because all they see is the gang banging, uh, blood on the streets, and all that. But that's just as a Hispanic speaking, uh, that's what I see. But that's why I kind of am running because I want other Hispanics to get involved. It's honestly very difficult to get into Hispanic media. It's I've tried for other campaigns, like reached out, no word, which is surprising, especially in Ohio. Like a Hispanic running for office in Ohio, like you would think more people would get on board, especially in Hispanic media, but whatever. Then again, Hispanic media is very Democrat, so that's probably the issue. But whatever. But it's like just a few Hispanics I know telling them, hey, get involved. Like, yeah, politics, whatever. It may seem like a white person's game here, but it affects you. I mean, you talk crap about Trump in whenever we hang out. Get involved, be different, um, step up to the plate. Like for me, like hell, I'm running for office. I'm probably gonna be the first Mexican in the state legislature in Ohio, which is crazy to think about, and the youngest member of the legislature as well. But hope not to be the last, and hopefully other Hispanics, other Black people are loving what I'm saying, which is great, getting those votes too. Uh, uh, but just act inspiring people, just telling them like, hey, stand up. If you don't see yourself be represented, run yourself and be that person you want to see up there. I tell people it's like for me it was just a political thing. Like I didn't see my viewpoints being representative, but I didn't see the person I saw in the mirror being representative. Like obviously, like am I gonna win
I,
the district with a Hispanic vote here? No, but it's a start for the area.
I was on I was watching show the I think it was 2 nights ago here in Illinois. It's a podcast called Billy Straws, and were about the whole Ice Cube thing and stuff like that. And I was just like, um, if you really want to make a change, and I was typing this in the chat. I wasn't part of the podcast. I was like, if you really wanted at the lowest level, your neighborhood, your family, your neighborhood, your community. Okay, if you see something's not right, go to your city council meetings, your county board meetings, your school board meetings. Okay, you got to start somewhere. And if you don't like if there's something wrong and you don't like and there's no one running with that idea or whatever, run for office. Now, for me, that's not. I'm too freaking opinionated, okay, to run for office. All right, that's not me. Okay, if I were to win, I get assassinated probably first week in office. Okay, so that's not me. All right, um, but you got to start local, and that's where all politics is local. So I was just typing this in the chat room. Start local. Uh, be of your wards meetings, whether you're Democrat, Republican, or Libertarian, or whatnot. All politics is local. And, that's the onus change your community is to be involved in your community. So, um, anyway, anybody got any final word? Well, actually, what I want everybody to do is go through and tell them what office you're running for and give them your website and any parting words.
I'll go first again. I'm Mercedes Davidowski. I'm running for Nebraska State Legislature, District 37. You can find me at votemercedes.com and Vote Mercedes 2020 on Facebook. And final parting thoughts, I'm going to pull a Spike Cohen and let you know that change starts with you. If you need to see something that you think needs changed, do it. No one's going to do it for you. And remember that you are the power. So that's it. That's all I got. Thank you for having me today,
No
Chris.
problem. Always.
All
Ramon.
right, so we'll keep it in the same order. My name is again Ramon Anthony Doan, running for U.S. Senate in the state of Colorado. So overall, this has been a great year. 2020 has been weird all by itself. Uh, Fires, bugs, pandemic, COVID-19, that's whatever's happening this year. Hopefully, we all can make it through. And the best part about it is, if you vote for me, I can assure you we will get through this. Now, my website is doneforcolorado.com. It is DOANE, the number 4, Colorado.com. You can also put the word for in there. But most importantly, I want you to spread this message. When you vote for the person that can win instead of that should win, you will lose. And the best person is you winning. That is it. Politicians, this is not a game. This is not, the NFL, the NBA, NHL, any of that stuff. It is about you. So you need to vote for who should win to better your life, not the who promises you the most stuff, but who's actually going to better your life by promoting sound legislation, making sure that there is no government overreach, and most importantly, actually being a servant to the people. And that is you.
All right, I was last one to speak, but my name's Oscar Herrera. I'm running for the 96th District of Ohio. You could check me out at electoscarherrera.com. Just right here, electoscarherrera.com. and just learn more about me, my race. I don't plan on stopping in my political um, career, so to speak, whether it's in public office or just being in the public sphere. But this isn't my last rodeo. I don't plan on leaving this circus. Uh, I'm picking up really good momentum right now from both sides. So I want to build a rainbow coalition of people just to work together and tackle these issues and just have a diverse backgrounds and diverse opinions and not just have the same establishment folks up in Columbus and in our local level dictating the narrative. So if you want to learn more about me, I already plugged my website. You can find me on Facebook as well. Love to chat with the rest of you whenever we get a chance and just see what we can do to help the Libertarian Party grow in that regard with the minority communities. So thanks for having me. It was a pleasure chatting with you all.
Thank you for coming on, everybody. I appreciate it. What more can I say? We got a lot of work to do, especially recruiting more people. I mean, I see you guys also have campaigns to run, but at the same time, though, politics is all local. Um, uh, the most damage government does to you is a local level, and that I see, more people in the off years or whatever run more local races. I mean, running for Senate, running for, House of Rep, stuff like that is important too. But the more the party can grow, the more we push candidates, and hopefully we get candidates in spots where we have a certain underrepresentation. So on that, I thank you once again. Hopefully, somewhere down the road, we can meet again and maybe come up with a game plan or kind of a solution thing, and just expand on everything that we said here tonight. So my name's Chris Bennett, and I'm signing off. Thank you for listening to the Homegrown LiBEERtarian podcast. Thank you and good night.
Ramon, add me on the Facebooks.